think exactly at the hour.
Okay.
And now we can wait each other.
Yes. Now it's 10. Meeting the hour has come. Welcome everybody to Witty Storytellers Online. Today is a special event, the Pathways panel. You are in luck. Please enjoy our meeting. But before we go on to that, this meeting will be recorded. So should you not wish to be included, you can turn off your webcam. But I would like you to see your smiles and reaction. I encourage you to show up. And I might unmute you during the meeting, and especially our panelists are talking. So please let me handle your noise and so forth. And I appreciate that. I am going to my pass control over to our queen, Michelle, please.
Thank you very much, Princess Masako. And if those our guests do not know what that queen and princess was all about, you have to come more often. We're not going to tell you. And welcome, everyone. This is, well, every meeting of Witty Storytellers is a special meeting. And actually, but this is a special meeting because we are themed on pathways. And who is not interested in pathways? That is such an amazing educational revitalization for Toastmasters International. And so we are themed on that today. We welcome everyone who is with us and everybody who will be coming in shortly. As our Sergeant at Arms has mentioned, we would like to keep our audio muted unless we are speaking or unless the person handling the segment would say that he or she would prefer for all of us to unmute. And so having a special meeting also means having a special Toastmaster, one of our veteran members, charter member of this club, as well as a charter member of other online clubs. I believe, I'm sure of Great White North and probably Fibers, I'm not sure of that, but he is very active in the online world. He's also very active in the physical or on-site world, as well as the blended world of clubs that have both online and physical presence. So I am honored and delighted to introduce our Toastmaster for the day. Let us all welcome Sir Brian Dodd.
Thank you, Michelle. I will get right to the point and introduce to you the moderator of this meeting, of the panel meeting, which we're calling Pathways Experience. George Marshall is a member of District 57 in Northern California, the first district to experience pathways. He was the chief pathways guide for the district, responsible for every aspect of the launch, including recruiting, training, and supporting pathways guides as they brought pathways to all clubs. In this panel discussion, he will moderate a discussion on pathways with the panelists for the district. His panelists, he has Julie Cortez. Julie joined with me 7 months ago into a pilot District 27 club in Washington, D.C., which is still, I'm still in that particular club, and she's in a different one in Washington now. Julie once lived there with her daughter, who still lives there. She finished her visionary communication path and is currently working on the leadership development path to spread the importance of storytelling and organizing togetherness with Paul White storytelling events. Between Witty Storytellers and 3 storyteller clubs Paul founded in Virginia. Julie also publishes a daily blog about her Pathways experience. The other panelist is our own Michelle Alba Lim. Her mission in life is to help to in bringing out the best in people and organizations to be a catalyst for others in reaching for greater heights. She recently started yet another online Toastmaster club called Global Trainers Online, having submitted the club's application on the stage at the 2017 International Convention in Vancouver. I was there beside her. She is past district director of District 7 and is in more than one club in the Pathways program. George.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good whatever you are and wherever you are. I'm so glad to be here. This is wonderful attendance. I just left my home club an hour ago, and there's more people here online than there were in my home club. And it's a good club. Let's get right down to it. Pathways is the biggest change that has happened to Toastmasters in a very, very long time. The program that we all know and love, have been working on, was created and fleshed out basically in the late 70s and early 80s. And many of the manuals have only had superficial changes since then. The CC manual has gone through a couple of names and some minor revisions, but honestly, I believe that Dr. Smedley would recognize some of the text in that manual. So Toastmasters, after debating, thinking, studying, researching for several years on what was then called the Revitalized Education Program, has brought out Pathways. So tonight we're going to talk about Pathways. This is a Pathways project, by the way. You're going to be astounded at the theme. It is a moderating a panel discussion project. One of the lovely things about Pathways is we do have a lot of projects. So with my wonderful co-panelists, Michelle and Julie, we're going to talk about different aspects of the program. First, I want to bring everyone up to speed on some key aspects of Pathways. So let me just show you a very few slides. Can you see my slide?
Yes.
Yes,
Thank you.
we can.
All right. So to this experienced bunch of folks, I'm sure this is a very familiar chart, the program chart to DTM, but I want to highlight a couple of things about it. If you go through all the way through the program, you start out with a competent communicator manual. You'll do 2 advanced manuals, 5 each, and once you start an advanced manual, you have to complete the entire manual in order to get credit for it. Advanced Communicator Silver is a couple of more manuals and some other functions. Advanced Communicator Gold adds 2 more advanced manuals and even more challenging communications in the form of a speechcraft, youth leadership, or whatever. We have a separate leadership track. We've had 2 tracks for a long time. Leadership track came into existence several years ago. On that one, you'll do the Competent Leader Manual, our familiar guy, the red manual cover. You do, to earn the Advanced Leader Bronze, you'll serve as a club officer and do some other functions, as I'm sure you all know. And then to earn the Advanced Leader Silver requires even more challenges, including serving as a district officer, a sponsor, mentor, coach, and a leadership style project called the High Performance Leadership. Do those all and you earn the Distinguished Toastmaster. What does that chart look like when we go to Pathways? It's different, but you're going to recognize some familiar elements. A new member would start out. One of the requirements is to complete a path. We'll talk a little bit more about what's in a path. And to complete another path. You also have to serve as a club sponsor or speechcraft or youth leadership. Sounds a little familiar, doesn't it? You need to serve as a club mentor or as a club coach. Again, these are familiar. They've been rearranged just a little bit. You still need to serve as a club officer, but now the requirement is 12 months. It can be 2 separate 6-month terms, but until 12 months. And of course, you still need to serve as a district officer. Having done all that, you then need to complete the DTM project. Some of you may have heard this called the capstone project, but DTM is the name. And having done that, you will earn the Distinguished Toastmaster Award. Now you can see there's some structural differences here. First of all, let's look at the paths and the levels. On the traditional program, we would complete 6 advanced manuals. Each one has 5 speaking projects. Choose different ones. Again, you have to do the entire manual if you want credit for it. On pathways, we have what are called paths. Clever, right? Paths, pathways. There's 5 levels in each path, just as there were always 5 projects in each advanced manual, adding up to a total of 14 projects. Now, how do those break down? Levels 1, 2, and 3 are primarily communications projects. And if you dig into those, you would say that you might even recognize some of those. So many of them look similar to projects we already know from the communications track. Levels 4 and 5 are far more interesting. They have some speech type projects. They also have leadership projects. There's an opportunity for far more of what we call leadership, coordinated the people to work, doing things outside the club in order to attain it. Now tonight we are not going deep into the paths. I'm just going to remind you that just as we have 15 manuals, of which you need 6 to complete a DTM, and pathways we have 10 manuals, of which you need 2 to complete a DTM. And just in case you're curious, I've been working on these. I have completed Presentation Mastery. I am nearly complete with Visionary Communication. The project tonight is a level 5 project. And I've done a few projects on innovative planning. And there are other people in the world that have far along, have done even more than this. We'll talk a little bit about the adoption strategy. In fact, we'll talk about it right now. So the question is, we've got this new program. How are people doing? What's happening? This graph tries to show you how many awards have been earned in pathways. And I'm only counting the districts that have been out there for several months. These are the 3 pilot districts. So, and I've set them all to where, even though they launch at different times, the graph pretends that they all start at the same time. So if we go to all of them, we would see that there's close to 110 projects that were earned in about 4 months. District 57, this line right here, is furthest ahead. District 27, a smaller district than 57, is running a little slower behind there. And 51, a slightly larger district than 57, but the first one to try pathways in a different language, is not quite as far along with 5 months. So you'd say we started off slow. If you look at this first part, obviously people were learning the system. And then as we get further into it, you're seeing more and more people adopted. In District 57, for example, the end of our Pathways Guides term coincided with the end of the Toastmaster year. And there hadn't been that much participation. Once the Toastmaster year was over, a whole bunch of people jumped over to Pathways. So we're seeing good uptake. It's still very, very early days, but we're seeing the beginning of it. Now, I have 2 folks with me tonight, and they're going to talk about different aspects of Pathways. Julie, as you heard in the introduction, has completed a number of projects. I consider her a pretty experienced member. Michelle is in a different situation. She's in a district that's only recently rolled out on Pathways, and she's going to share some of her opinion there. So first, I'm going to ask Julie, in about 3 minutes, just to give us your initial thoughts about Pathways. We'll come back to you again later. So Julie, you're up.
Pathway has changed my life completely. I went home because I consider Washington area home. And I begin very badly because the first time I opened Navigator, it bombed on me. I did not know it was the first day of beginning of pathway, and probably too many wanted to go in, or my name was not there yet. But I have to tell you, a long time I didn't even touch that program. But I choose a path, and then for some reason, I will tell another time, I choose another. And the path I went through one by one was visual communication. It didn't take long, only the first level to fall in love, head and completely in love with pathway. First of all, I understood that pathway is Smedley vision come true in the new era. And secondly, I understood there is a lot more to the project than it seems, and a lot more than the title gives you. You give a speech after each of it, but that is only a wrap-up of the project, in fact. But the projects go deeper and farther into what they want to say. For example, at the end of level 1, the same project Sudha will speak about is research and presenting. And I did research very seriously because I am a researcher, experimental one. And it was told to take an interview of someone who is expert. And who do you think I interviewed? George Marshall. I went all the way to his home, far away, and I met him there. I met his wife, who looked to see who else is with whom he is speaking so long, and we learned a lot. And of course, Graham was right. I didn't tell all the names of all the people and all the books I read, but I did read a lot. And what I learned, because I combined pathway research with the transition, because we are a transition period now, and transition change is not easy. So I had a few books about transitions, like this one, and then like this one, and they taught me what is important, how an organization, how someone must do to ease the transition. For me, I am pioneer for everything new, so it was not so bad, and I had already a DTM, and I didn't want a second one myself, so I went in. Our timer is George, and he will let me know when it's 3 minutes off, finished. Yes, thank you. And so, okay, that's an interruption I have to know how to handle, because I made a project which was how to deal with difficult audiences, audience that interrupt. And I learned it was a very funny project. Besides going really deep, I have to tell you that each project teaches you something deep. And George, who is a panelist, told me it is finished, my 3 minutes.
Julie, we're going to come back to you, but right now I want to hear from Michelle. Michelle, can you tell us how you got involved in Pathways and some of your initial impressions about it?
Absolutely. I actually applied for Pathways Ambassador initially it was very slow start. We weren't hearing anything. And then we started hearing that, yes, District 57 had started, and I started hearing about District 27. And because District 7 was still way out there, I contacted District 57. We didn't have a very quick response, so I moved over to 27. Very quickly, I was welcomed. So I started on Pathways in late April or early May. And so I felt like I was the very early adapter in District 7. During our Toastmasters Leadership Institute first during the conference in May, we had the opportunity to speak about it. And I felt like, hey, I'm the only person who's been already in base camp. And so I was pointing out things and sharing my experiences with everybody else who did not. And they were wondering, how are you in Pathways? And so I explained my little secret that I joined a district that already has Pathways. In District 7, members are smart. So they started looking around, and pretty soon several members of District 7 were also on Pathways. Honestly, now when we finally started with the Pathways Guides training, I was amazed to see how many of our Pathways guides in District 7 were very resourceful, had connected with clubs in other districts. And we probably have a very wide range in District 7. We have some Pathways guides. I want to mention, for example, Laurelie Norris, who did a fantastic job with combining her slides and the videos and speaking with the audio. It was almost like a professionally done program. And there's James Wantz on that side. And then there are several guides towards the other extreme who are, I don't want to use the word lost, but very close to that, trying to figure out. And here I am. I'm finding myself somewhere maybe in the middle and trying to help, but trying not to jump in and do things for them, connecting resources. So it's an amazing experience. I actually started a Pathways Guides forum, and then I started getting requests from other districts. And so I had to add District 7. So this is just for District 7. And we have wonderful exchanges there. And recently I started a Pathways discussion forum for the world, for anyone who wants to get into Pathways. So my experience as a Pathways guide is really not just as the guide for a few clubs, which I am helping, but also helping fellow guides and just spreading the word about Pathways. And so, yeah, it's a wonderful experience, and there's still more to come. Back to you, George.
Thank you, Michelle. Wonderful. Here in District 57, we've had some members who were extraordinarily enthusiastic about the program. We have one chap who I believe is the world record holder on Pathways Awards Complete. But I'm not sure that quantity and quality go along together. Julie, let's come back to you. And you've done a number of projects now. How about if you pick one or two and just tell us in a few minutes what you liked about them and something about a Pathways project and how it's different from the traditional ones. Julie?
One of the projects I liked very much, it was make a compelling blog. I have blogged from when I was 70-year-old, young, 13 years ago for 10 years. And then I stopped for 3 years. And I really missed blogging. So I decided to make, instead of 8 blogs, which the project asked me, make 30. Because I knew that if you don't make regularly, people would not come back. But when I got to 30, of course, the project tells you you have to speak 2 minutes about it. But you have to ask someone before to read your blog and give you an evaluation of how they like your blog. So I did ask Jenny from Firebirds, she loved my blog and still reading it after 6 years now, 6 months, pardon, now. But of course, because I write every day, more and more people came. So I think that one of the characteristics of a project in Pathway is to push you to do something, even outside Toastmaster, and don't stop. It doesn't stop when you did your speech. I have now 170 posts and about 17,000 hits on it. And as the people come in Pathway, new and new readers who are interested and want to learn. So that would be my one project, but I have many others I could pick. For the moment, that is the one.
And ask, you managed to get yourself into a club outside your district. In fact, Julie, you did too. But Michelle, in your role as a Pathways Guide, you are introducing members of your district to Pathways for the first time. Most of them did not have the same experience you did with an early peak. So tell us what some of the reactions have been to members to the Pathways program, please.
Yes, it's again, the range is from A to Z. We have some people who are very excited. On the other hand, sad to say, some members are just, it's like, okay, yeah, so what are we going to do? I actually had a very interesting question from a member of one of the clubs that I was assigned to. He said, so I am about to retire. What is Pathways going to do for me? And instead of me answering, I turned over to the Vice President for Education, who's one of those who's really excited. And I asked her to respond. And she gave a wonderful response about Toastmasters not just being for the professional world, but also for the community and even with your family and friends and all that, and your church. So he kind of picked up on that. But it's a very, very wide range. And so my feeling is that instead of pushing it really hard, and I think Jimmy is also here, and I'm going to borrow what he said in one of our forums, I think the Pathways Discussion Forum, instead of trying to push it, trying to get people to have buy-in, just demonstrate how you're enjoying Pathways, what you're gaining, and then be there to support for people who are interested, because I think that way people will be more encouraged rather than trying to push them. And that's my experience.
Thank you, Michelle. We found people with very different reactions in Pathways in District 57. Initially, I think it tended to be more apathy. These were folks that in February, March, April, May already had their goal for what they wanted to achieve for the Toastmaster year, and most of them weren't so interested in hearing what new can do. As we get into the new Toastmaster year, I'm finding a lot more interest in it, embracing it more wholeheartedly. Michelle, let's get back to you. You've talked about your different kind of projects, and it sounds like you really like the ones you worked on. Can you give us an example of one that you actually found more challenging than the others? Julie. Sorry, Julie.
Yes.
You asked me or Michelle?
You, please, Julie. My mistake. Go ahead.
Okay. The project so far I found more challenging. What is your communication style? Because it asked me questions and put me in boxes, and I don't feel I belong to boxes. And those boxes has titles which I did not understand, so I was lost. I have a wonderful mentor who is Matthew Kleinowski, who helped me out when I was lost and couldn't close a project and couldn't close the first time level. He came even to my computer to show me how to do it. And when I asked him what to do, he told me, you are a pioneer, find your way. So I learned that sometimes a mentor has to be tough. First I hated him, and then I went to Google because I learned in level 1 that we have to do research. So I Googled communication styles, and I found there are different ways to explain it. And then I remembered that I had to communicate in stand-up comedy with young people who had a different vocabulary than me and make them accept me. So I found a way to finish my project, and from then on I understood that it depends how you look at it. Every project finally can be very interesting.
With a different kind of question, because you've been doing Pathways Out of District, you actually have quite a bit of experience yourself. A lot of members, particularly those that have been in Toastmasters a while, really have gotten caught up in the differences between the traditional program and the Pathways program. And just about every experienced member I've talked to had some favorite aspect of the traditional program, and they're a little sad because that same feature isn't in the current program. Michelle, can you tell us how you would describe the value of Toastmasters to a new member? Not someone who's comparing the traditional program to the new program. Has the value proposition for Toastmasters actually changed as a result of Pathways? So again, thinking of a prospect who knows nothing of our current program, what would you tell them is the value of Toastmasters?
Thank you for that excellent question, George, because actually long before Pathways, I'm one of those people who always discourages explaining Toastmasters like, oh, we have the A counter and we have the CL manual and we have the CC manual, and members, new prospects don't even know what we're talking about. So what I do is, first off, I don't even tell them. I ask them what are their needs, what are their goals, where are they in their careers and their lives, and then I listen. And from the listening, I pick up what are the benefits of Toastmasters that they would be interested in. And there's a list of 101 benefits of Toastmasters that has nothing to do with whether it's a CC manual or a Pathways level, whatever. So for example, if I'm talking with a young person who is trying to get ahead in the corporate world, then I would talk with them about how being in Toastmasters would help them to communicate more assertively, to be able to speak with confidence, be concise, manage their time efficiently and effectively, and their eyes would light up. And I never mentioned the CC manual or the counter or the timer and any of those. So frankly, it doesn't change. I cringe actually when I hear Toastmasters saying to new prospects, oh, we are going to have Pathways and this and that. And I'm like, no, they don't know what Pathways is, and it doesn't matter to them. So George, as far as I'm concerned, I wouldn't even change anything. The only thing maybe that I would add is Toastmasters is a dynamic organization. And in fact, you would be perfectly timed when you join because it has just rolled out an even more relevant program to the needs of the 21st century. That's all I would say. Back to you.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Michelle. We're coming up on our closing time, but I want to give our two panelists time for final thoughts. Julie, wrapping up your experiences so far, what would be your recommendations to other members regarding Pathways? In about a minute, please.
So I think, first of all, to be passionate about it, because passion shows out. As in our club, we have now more than 60% on Pathway within our members, and it still didn't arrive to our district, which is undistricted. But of course, all our members are in different clubs, dual members or triple or quadruple members. And I asked a question not long time ago. All of them want to go now pathway because the emotion, the passion we had went through even without telling. That is one. The second thing is we have some funny projects, like, for example, interrupting each other to learn how to handle nicely professional interruption, or other, which I really liked. And once you get in the pathway, in my opinion, you will very fast forget all that was before. Because it's so much better, so much deeper, and better learning. George, we don't hear you.
Michelle, go ahead.
Sorry, we didn't hear your question.
Same question as for Julie, which is your recommendation to our gathered attendees here on pathways and how to take advantage of it.
Thank you. I would like to piggyback on what Julie said, to just be really enthusiastic about it yourself. And there's just so much to learn. In addition, I would like to recommend or suggest to everyone to listen to all the ideas that are coming up, but to keep an open mind. Because for example, if you listen to one person who is having a bad day with pathways, then it can bring you down. And then if you listen to somebody else who is so happy with the experience, then it might give you a false sense of expectation and excitement. So my recommendation is, like with anything new, be very open, be ready to experience some feeling of discomfort, some feeling of, I'm not, I don't know this is not me. Why don't we just go back to the old whatever? But that is a natural part of growth. So when you experience discomfort, welcome it, because that means that you are stretching out of your comfort zone. And expect that sometimes it's the littlest, tiniest things, like enabling the pop-ups, that can block you. And sometimes the really big things are actually easier than you expected. So expect the unexpected. Be ready to stretch. Be ready to be sometimes discouraged on certain days. Be ready to get really excited on other days. And just enjoy the journey, because really that's what we are here for in Toastmasters. We want to enjoy while learning. Once enjoyment is gone, then it's probably time to think of something else.
Thank you, Michelle and Julie. Let me very brief thoughts, since we're a bit over time here. Is members have different opinions about pathways. By and large, I think most people like it. If a member is getting close to earning their distinguished Toastmaster on the traditional program, I don't think anyone would blame them for wanting to continue on do it. But here's what I would challenge everyone to do, which is, even if you're on that path of you've got a few more to go, get into pathways, do a few projects so that you understand how it works, which means you will be able to help your new members, because the new members are only on pathways. With that, I conclude our panel. Thank you again, Julie and Michelle, and back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, George. A little piece of that I didn't mention at the beginning was George and I met with Susan Ellsworth, and we were doing an evaluation of Zoom, which Susan and I thought, no, it doesn't have what we need. And now, a couple of years later, more and more of us are finding the power of Zoom. And now we're going to have a real demonstration of pathways in action. Sudha is our speaker. She's in other clubs, and some with me. And I don't know which the path you were taking because I can't find the note, but her speech is going to be Musings on Pathways, an Early Adopter. 5 to 7 minutes. Sudha.
Morning, evening, and afternoon, wherever you are. What an exciting panel discussion that was. And I think many of our panelists have chosen to pick on certain aspects of it, which I admired and also inspired by those experiences when they shared with me when I joined. My journey started in August 2015 when our then district leader, Kevin Lee, many of you may know or may not, he's a chief ambassador for District 71. He told us about this pathways, and I was like, I was only 6 months in when I heard about this pathways, and I was like, oh, how do I get on? Oh, by the way, you won't be able to get on that till it is rolled end of 2018. 2017, 2018. I was like, oh, I've got to wait for another 2 years to get on that program. So I started my journey on DTM, the regular, the current one. And I am, as George pointed out, I am maybe 2 levels, 2 advanced certifications away and 1 HPL away from DTM. And I started this pathway journey maybe a month ago, exactly 21 days ago, with Emperor's Toastmaster, Mandarin Toastmasters. And I said, Zaldi, I'll pay you the money. Tell me where to pay. I'm going to go on this pathways. It didn't take me a while to even contemplate on whether I'm going to finish current DTM and then go on. And I said, no, I'm joining. Boy, was it a journey which I was thinking, oh my God, I am a technical person and I've got about 22 years in IT industry and Basecamp, and I develop online courses and learning management systems, and Basecamp did challenge me. I was thinking, okay, what am I doing wrong? Julie, I'm not able to close my project. Can you help me? Was my first scream. And then I thought, okay, just breathe, take it on your own level and see how it all goes as you tell others. And then I went on Basecamp. Julie came back and helped me on it. And I said, okay, I'm going to go on. And I completed the project and also started looking at other aspects. Navigator is the best tool anyone could use to get to know if they are a new person who's just venturing on Toastmasters journey or any experienced Toastmaster who could go and see what are each roles, what are the club meetings look like, how it's evaluation, and they do have online videos on evaluation and all of that. I was excellent, and they do PDF as well. You can download and read it on your own if you don't want to go interactive and spend. I am talking about all exciting things. And then I was like, someone told me, oh, you cannot do certain things on, and I said, no, I'm going to find out. Zaldi pointed out for me, I've already chosen dynamic leadership, innovative planning, and leadership development, strategic leadership paths. That's in my mind. I looked at the description, I chose it, and then it was all well. And then I went on Begin Your Journey, and there is an assessment. What level you are and what your interests are, and then it gives you 3 paths. And those paths were, incidentally, persuasive influence, dynamic leadership, and innovative planning. So that was not far off. So it was a very, very exciting thing for me to see, okay, I've got this pathway in a right angle. And it's about, I've always enjoyed change, so it's never been difficult for me. But when you're in the transition, it feels like ages. It feels like ages. It's like, come on, get me out of this. I loved every bit of it. I'm 21 days. I'm going to finish by today what the research and presenting. All my research, I didn't go and interview anyone. My research was just observing people, listening to people, listening of what they think of pathways and what they don't like of pathways and all of that, and making a judgment on my own, saying, okay, this is what it is. Unless you experience something, people are going to give the stories. You won't understand. You're on your own journey, not in someone else's. That is exactly what I felt when I was researching. It's good. I love my projects, and I know the projects are going to be very, very good, because it's going to help me in my coaching and also in my business, like podcasts and writing a blog, which I've been putting off for quite a while, I must say, even being a person who is quite on to the new things. So this is a very good example of like trying out without being pushed into, or without compelling yourself, oh, you've got to do this because it's your business. So I loved every part of it. And I am eternally thankful to Julie for getting on this path of pathways. And she's the one, Emperor Mandarin Toastmasters are the one, they've got pathways already. It was like, oh, that's good. Thank you very much. I'm joining them. So I'm eternally thankful to everyone who've been guiding me and who would be guiding me in future as well. Thank you.
I too have been waiting to get into pathways. I first heard about it when the first email came out from the world headquarters about who wants to be an ambassador, and I believe it was to get involved in creating the program in the first place. They waited and watched and came out with a few presentations long before Pathways was rolled out. And when I did get into Pathways, the thing for me was that I was 90% right in what I had anticipated from the information I was getting about what Pathways is. And the interesting thing is, if you ever take the basic training manual for Toastmasters that Ralph Smedley wrote way back in the 40s, you will find that Pathways has come alive again. That manual has come alive again in what we're doing today in Pathways. His message is no different than it was over 100 years ago. Our next person is the evaluation of the Pathways program. The form is different, and when I'm giving speeches in my normal clubs, I give a Pathways speech and send them the evaluation form. So Carol, how well did our Pathways speaker do today?
Thank you, Toastmaster Brian, and congratulations, Sudha, on your beautiful presentation today. I was delighted to be able to pick up the evaluation form from Basecamp for myself today. But I will give you my thoughts on what I saw that was excellent, what you may improve and some things to challenge yourself, and most of all, what I liked. about your presentation. In the beginning, Sudha had a very engaging start. It was clear and passionate, and we knew we were in for a treat. She showed enthusiasm for her journey, and that beautiful smile told us that she was enjoying it. I love the preciseness of what Sudha told us. 21 days ago I started, and where do I pay? Now these are little expressions that indicate and show the enthusiasm. She was able to use small gestures that we could easily see quite simply in front of her to describe what she was doing. And for me, what came out of the presentation was the importance of the actual experience. Some points for improvement that you may want to consider, and these are just my impressions and opinions. You might want to give a little structure at the beginning of your speech to indicate what you're going to tell us. Especially in this case, because of the nature of it being researching and presenting. And a good presenter, of course, will tell us what you're going to tell us. And at the end, you can tell us what you told us. That is one way to improve upon that. To challenge yourself, you might want to have a look at the impact of your words and your expressions on your audience. Look around and just see who's smiling, who's falling asleep. No one was falling asleep during your session. Now, the most enjoyable part for me is to give you my feedback on what I liked. I liked when you told us that the navigator is the best tool. Not unlike the yellow duck, it tells us where we're at. I liked the way you expressed your activities in networking with those who would help you. These are good pieces of learning to take forward. And I particularly liked your descriptions of your personal story. For example, some details that you shared with us about how you selected your path. These were excellent. Wrapping up, I'd like to mention how well Sudha actually wrapped up. She gave thanks to her mentors and those who had helped her along the way. And I express my thanks to you because what I've learned from you, I will pass on to others. Back to you, Toastmaster Brian.
Thank you, Carol. As most of you are aware now, that the evaluation that we get from a pathways evaluation is not really any different than we would get from the traditional evaluation. The other aspects of the pathways is it stresses more on mentorship and evaluation. And the feedback is how we grow as not only Toastmasters, but as people in the world and with our families. Now, to test your knowledge of what you've heard today, we have Mathilde Fisher, and she is going to give you some pathways, table topics. Mathilde.
Thank you very much, Mr. Toastmaster. First of all, I would like to once again give you a short introduction how table topics are working. You might say whatever you think. It does not have to be true, but I hope you will share your experience on pathways with us. You have 1 to 2 minutes, and I would like to ask our timer, George, to show us his cute devices, how he will indicate the times for us. This will be at 1 minute. This will be at 1 minute and 30. And the red paper indicates that you are at 2 minutes and you should find an end of your speech. So I'm very happy to ask all the experienced people here to share what they think about pathways. So first of all, we heard so much about Emperor Mandarin. I would like to ask Zaldi to come on screen and tell us which experience he has made with pathways and which path you have chosen.
Just change my screen. Oops. Okay. I chose two paths, team collaboration and effective coaching. Effective coaching because it came out of my assessment, and team collaboration because I thought that was needed in my work, especially I might be working with remote teams in my next projects. So in my pathways journey, as many of you know, I'm the techie guy here, and it's known all over, also in my district. So I'm in my journey, I was more of a mentor to all the rest, even though I was not an officially a pathways guide. So I didn't have to visit the clubs. All I do is communicate here online, and many of the members here in our district still don't use this platform called Zoom. So either I have to use uh, Facebook Messenger or Viber to communicate. And one of the most useful approaches to communicate uh, using for pathways is screenshots. So I do a lot of screenshots. Like with Suda, I showed every step of the way the payment process. For those who don't know how to navigate Basecamp, I also show them the screen by screen, play by play account of how to do what they want to do. So it's a great experience here in doing pathways. And what I love about pathways, which I still have to get to that level for, is working on the digital projects. It's because these are new projects where you have an audience, where you don't really speak in front, but you do have an audience. Back to you, Table Topics Master.
Thank you very much, Zaldi, for your wonderful insights. Now you have a person you can turn to. You learned he's a techie person and he will help you easily with his slideshows and screenshots. Now I would like to ask Elizabeth on screen and ask her what the first reaction was about pathways when you first heard of it.
My first reaction is extremely positive. I was very struck by, I've been following George on line for many months, and Julie and so on, and I think I'm absolutely going to love Pathways. I've met Suda, so I know her enthusiasm about everything. So I would say my first impressions are very positive. The one thing I wasn't so clear about are how ordinary members respond to Pathways. I sense that Julie, George, Suda are all enthusiasts, and I can understand that, but I'd love to get a better feeling for how the average Toastmaster responds to Pathways, and also what training is provided to them. I got my DTM a few months ago, but I am desperately waiting for Pathways, because as soon as it comes to our region, I intend to start Pathways. And that's why I'm up at 6 o'clock in the morning to listen to what is being said. But to summarize, I'm very, very positive about everything I've heard this morning. So thank you to everyone.
Thank you, Elizabeth. That's wonderful to hear. And you also heard how you can already now join pathways in another district, if you like. My next question would be, as Elizabeth already said, she was pleased what you heard today. For the next person, what were your thoughts when you first heard of pathways and how did it change from today's session? And there I would like to ask Bruce. What Bruce? Ruth.
Sorry?
Ruth, the lady.
Sorry, okay. Sorry.
But we can't hear you. I have another question for you, Bruce, especially for you. Bruce, could you please turn on your audio? It is a little beside the video camera. There is a little button on the left, and there you can unmute yourself.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Can you hear me now?
That's it. Yes.
Okay. Tell me.
What was your first expression when you heard about pathways, and how was it changed from what you heard today?
Where I live in Curacao. We're not on pathways yet. This is the second meeting that I have with you guys, and it sounds interesting. And I'm wondering, I have to redo all my projects in Toastmaster. I'm wondering if it's worthwhile or wait, the pathway comes our way, because apparently it's different and it sounds interesting and great. So I look forward to when it comes to Curacao.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to hear later on how you found it when it rolled out at your place. Now I would like to know, what is the most helpful resource? If there are any questions, or besides that, this could be a tool, it could also be a person. And I would like to ask Graham this question.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just, yes, my microphone is now working. Can I ask if you could just repeat that question, please, Michelle? I'm sorry, my next door neighbor has started mowing my lawn.
Sure. What's the most helpful resource if you have any questions on pathway? It could be a tool, or it could also be a person. What would you recommend?
Look, like Zaldi, I am the go-to person for District 69's Pathways Guides. I have been appointed as a Pathways Guide, but really all I'm doing is providing tech assistance. Quite frankly, the best available assistance would be to go to Pathways on the Toastmasters website, or, for that matter, to go to Facebook. There is an enormous amount of information becoming available to members around the world. Now, there are, and I suspect that many of the people who are here in this room today, virtual room, have either signed up for or are at the very least watching some of those Facebook groups discussing pathways. There's an enormous amount of information which is coming out there, and if nothing else, I would encourage members, new members, existing members, members who really don't want to have anything to do with pathways, to talk to those who are actually actively involved in the process. I joined a North American club so that I could start pathways. I actually chose the wrong club, quite frankly. It only meets once a month, and so I've, in the 6 months that I've been a member, only been able to give my icebreaker. But I found an awful lot of information from that club, and I'm finding even more, as I say, from particularly Facebook and other social media. If you know of somebody who knows information, pick their brains. People like George are amazing in being willing to offer assistance, even if you are annoying them at times and suggesting that they're not members of your club, which they are, and I do apologise for that, George.
Thank you very much, Graham, for all those insights and presenting in such an entertaining way. My next question is going to Bruce because he already wanted to jump to the screen and I would like to hear something of you. As we already heard just currently from Graham, there are some Facebook groups and I saw that you also applied for one according to Pathways. What did you find there, or what are you hoping to find there?
Wow. Well, I have a lot of resources that I'm using as well as Facebook. In fact, two of them are sitting right here. I don't know what I would do without Julie and in fact, a lot of the other members here. On the Facebook, I don't quite know what, I haven't really been on it for that long, as you know. So I'm not really sure what I am expecting to find, but I've got so many questions. We, in our district, we haven't started with Pathways yet. And there are a lot of members that are in a position where when it comes online, they're not sure whether to speed them up. And a lot of the VPs in the clubs that I belong to are not sure whether to push people to complete so that they can start Pathways immediately, the people that are busy with the CC program in particular. So we've got lots of questions, and I'm like one of those people who like to be prepared for things so that when it eventually happens here, I've got answers for everyone and we can do things well. Everything that I hear about Pathways makes me more and more excited about it. I'm one of those who does believe that it is a really exciting thing that's happened in Toastmasters, and I was very interested in Julie's presentation this morning and the whole discussion. It just everything I hear about Pathways confirms what I think about it, and I'm looking forward to finding out a lot on the Facebook page. I'm not normally, don't spend a lot of time on Facebook, but with this one, I think I'm going to follow things a little bit, try and keep up to speed, and so that I can help all of the members around me when eventually it comes time. Madam Topics Master.
Thank you, Bruce. I really appreciate that you want to be prepared for everything and use different resources to find out all the information you would like to have and present them later on to people who need them. That's wonderful. And looking for that, for help and for finding a club especially, I would like to ask Jimmy Dent on screen. And could you tell us how you find a Pathway club, or how would you look for a Pathways club? What can you recommend?
Well, my district's not in Pathways yet, and I'd probably do like what other people have done. I'd seek out a club in another district that's already on Pathways that allows online attendance and inquire there about joining that club so I can get on to Pathways. I considered doing that myself, but I decided to hold off and wait, since I'm still working on some advanced communicator and advanced leadership awards, even though I have 2 DTMs. One of the exciting things I've discovered is I'm an ambassador, and our district is going to have Pathways rolled out in February. I've given the first presentation to all my clubs. I have not encountered any negativity as far as accepting Pathways, except for the only negativity I've heard is, why do we have to wait so long? Even new members that have joined maybe just 1 or 2 weeks ago aren't negative. They're not questioning, well, gee, I got to start this and I'm going to lose credit. They're more or less asking questions just exactly how they do the transition. What's their choices? So even they seem eager. One of the biggest surprises I got from some of the experienced Toastmasters is, yay, they're getting rid of the CO manual. And that surprised how much that was. It seems to be that there's more people hate the CO manual than I thought. I kind of like it because it's one of the easiest things to do. You just do the roles and check them off and help with special projects and get it signed off. It's not difficult. I've already picked my PATs already. I went through and analyzed. I'm going to do effective coaching and motivational strategies. And that's part of what I tell people when I give the ambassador presentation. I explain to them why I picked those two. One of the things a lot of people also like is they can complete paths without doing the club officer, district officer, and club coaching aspects. So that's my story.
Thank you very much, Jimmy, for sharing your story and letting us know how you're doing it and which paths you're taking. It's very interesting for all of us to find out who are on which paths and to maybe also contact them to learn what is in this path, to learn it and speak to really a person from it. And now I would like to know your advice to those who are still meddling but want to start to pathways. And I would like to ask this Paul White.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Wonderful. So please repeat the question.
What is your advice to those who are still meddling but they want to start pathways?
I think we just heard it in this panel. The excitement of people who have joined Pathways is really contagious. And what I tell everyone is just stop listening to everything and engage the program. If you're in a district where Pathways is already rolled out and you're working on other things, just open Pathways and give it a try. Because I tell everyone, if you engage with Pathways, you'll fall in love with it. That's certainly true for me and everyone that I know. And as I watch this panel and all of the people here and I see the enthusiasm for Pathways, I just can't help but feel, don't sit on the fence. Give it a try. What I most like about it is it has changed the way I look at Toastmasters. Before, I was basically doing service, really enjoying mentoring and coaching and moving away from speaking because speaking had become very routine. And with Pathways, it's like taking a new trail in a forest. And every time you round a curve in the trail, you find something new. And with Pathways, I'm still discovering new things. And I love that feeling of being on a voyage of discovery and exploration. So my advice to anyone is to just give it a try. Just try level 1 and level 2, and I almost guarantee you, you will be hooked on Pathways. Thank you, Madam Table Topics Master.
Thank you, Paul, for this wonderful speech and encouraging us to jump on this. And my last question is to Fabiola, and I would like to know what your impressions are about Pathways and how it was changed from today's meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Actually, since 2013, I became an ambassador for the rep. And since then, I got excited with what by then we got to know about Pathways. By then it was called rep. And now, lately in August, I became the chief ambassador for my district. And before that, I became a member of an online club in District 27 that allows online attendance. But unfortunately, with all the other things that I'm doing, didn't get my first level because I couldn't get into it with all the other things. But I'm still excited about that. And that's why I'm on today at 1 a.m. for me. Now it's about 2 a.m. that I get, every time I get to hear something about Pathways, I do get, want to get more information because I want to share it with all the members in my district so they too can see the benefit of Pathways. I have heard today a lot how Pathways is more geared towards your self-development. It's more interactive. It's more up to date. and you get more out of it than with the current program. So today's meeting only reinforces what I'm thinking about Pathway and my enthusiasms about Pathway. Back to you, Table Topic Master.
Thank you very much for your insights, and also I really appreciate that you stayed up till 2 o'clock in the night. With that, I would like to close and thank everybody who took part in Table Topic session and shared the experiences, their desires, their needs, and what they are wishing from Pathways. And I think there is an era coming up that will bring lots of new things for us which we can explore. And we should just jump in and have fun. So back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Mattel. Very interesting question and nicely directed to the different people who had the skills to answer those particular questions. I've got to give kudos to Julie. I was stuck on my first level. I couldn't get anywhere. I was talking to the people in the headquarters. But Julie said one day, come online. We got together on a Zoom session, and she prompted me through the session so that I knew how to get going. And my project that I ended with, which was an HPL project within Pathways, so that has not gone out the window, was to put on that event from the international conference and to the online members. Always in Toastmasters, it's the feedback that gives us the strength. And we have one of the best evaluators that I know in Paul White to give us a general evaluation of our meeting. Paul. Oh, can't hear you.
I can't unmute him.
How about now?
Fine.
Good. I'm almost blind, so I have great trouble finding those icons. So let's start the general evaluation with a timer's report, George, on Carol's speech. Carol's
Can you hear me okay?
I can, yes.
Good. Carol's time was at 3 minutes, 26 seconds tonight. Very well done, within slightly over time, but within the limit.
Good, thank you. Carol, your evaluation was really superb. I really like evaluations that cover positives, and you had lots of details on the positives. I also like evaluations that have areas for improvement, and you did that, and you went the one step beyond that because you also told the speaker not only what they could improve on, but how. You did that in a number of ways. You said you should certainly try to tell people what you're going to tell them and then tell them after you've told them. That's a standard thing that we say a lot, but we need to remember that. But you also talked about having an awareness of the impact on the audience. And you specifically said, look out at the audience and see who's smiling. Very good advice. So wonderful evaluation. I caught part of the panel presentation. For some reason, my computer froze up today. I apologize for being late. But on the, what I call the Power Pathways panel, it was really wonderful. Everyone was so enthusiastic. George is sort of the international face of Pathways. Julie is a consummate Pathways, I call Pathways junkie, who even blogs to the world about Pathways. And of course, Michelle always brings her ambassador guide love for training to the fore, and that's a real key to having a successful rollout. So the moderator, George, had some really carefully orchestrated questions, insightful questions that led everyone right along to a wonderful presentation, and the panelists themselves were very well prepared, very energetic, and of course, very motivational. That's what it's all about at the beginning. I think that this panel encouraged many people who are just getting started to continue with more enthusiasm, and also those people who are still sitting on the fence, you gave them some reasons to think about joining Pathways with lots of passion. And I love the comment, don't push, but just try to get engaged. I hope this panel recording will be shared very widely. Toastmaster of the Day, Brian, you did what Toastmasters do. You kept everything moving along, and with the help of the timer, that certainly worked. You kept everything flowing in good measure. So my evaluation of the meeting is when I learn something, when I enjoy something, and when I feel challenged to do something in a meeting, it's a really great meeting, and I certainly felt that way today. Kudos to WSO for the meeting and for the table topics master, Mathilde. What a smile, and what wonderful questions directed exactly to the person who had an answer. I love table topics when they allow the table topic speaker to shine, and that's what you did today. So all in all, a really wonderful meeting. What I like to say about these virtual clubs, the online clubs, is that they put the I in Toastmasters International. That's what you did. Thank you very much for a really, really wonderful meeting. And with that, I will turn control back to the Toastmaster of the Day, Brian.
Thank you, Paul. Now, Michelle has asked me to introduce the guests that have come to the meeting. I would ask for a little help from Misako, because I'm not sure who all the guests are, but I will go down the list of names that I'm not used to seeing in the meeting. So I will ask Ajit first what she thought of the meeting today.
Yeah, hi everyone. I am part of West Hearts Speakers Club in St. Albans, UK. And this was my first random visit to the Pathways Club, online club. And I just bumped into some of the Facebook messages from Sudha. And then I knew that there is something going on here. So I put alarm in my phone to wake up at 5:30 to attend the meeting. And I enjoyed the meeting. So I will be a regular visitor, and hopefully I will start as a member as well. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll ask, is Haida, is that how the way you say it? Is Haida?
Is she there?
She's there.
I think it's a Ishida.
Yeah. Ishida. Oh, I think
okay.
Just checked the meeting information of the Facebook the few hours ago, and thank having me today. And I belong to the District 76, Japan. Will be inducted the Pathways next March. So very interesting today's meeting. So, thank you.
Thank you.
That's all.
And Brian, I have posted on our chat, but for those who are not looking at the chat, guests, can you please, if you can put your email address on the chat so that we can include you in our invitations in the future? Because I know some of you just randomly came across and we might not be able to reach you for subsequent meetings. We do meet on the 2nd and 4th Thursdays or Wednesdays, depending on where you are, but it's 2nd and 4th, same time as this. Thank you, Brian.
Shall we, I know there are guests of our club in here. Shall I continue with them? Tracy.
I used to belong to a club in Perth, Western Australia, and I used to meet there weekly, but I've now moved to New South Wales, and my nearest Toastmasters is 200 kilometres away. So I'm now looking for an online club which I can join, and I can continue with my Toastmasters journey. I had some internet connection problems today, which meant at the beginning I couldn't get online, and then I lost transmission halfway through. And I can see that it was a lot to do with Pathways today, which my club, or old club, has not rolled out. But I'm looking to join a club which suits me time-wise, which this one does. And I thank you for allowing me to be a guest.
Thank you.
I am working on a list that will list the clubs that are in Pathways. The Toastmasters made a change at my request at the conference there, so it's possible to search out an online club that's in the Pathways program now. And the way you do it is you pick the time zone and pick the big city there, and it will give you a list of those clubs that are in Pathways, like San Francisco, and you can go out 150 miles and find all the clubs that are in there. Or Portland in Oregon. They're in the Pathways program now.
So Brian, I would like, just in the interest of time, because we know that we in Toastmasters, we want to manage our time. We now have just 4 minutes left. May I make this congratulations to you for having done a wonderful job as Toastmaster, and everybody unmute yourself so we can have on record your applause for our awesome Toastmaster of the day. Yay. Thank you so much, Brian. And let me just take it over from here, because I think we still have a few more. Oh, we have Kevin, and we have, I think, a couple more. So Kevin.
Elizabeth.
Sorry?
Elizabeth is also there. She's a guest.
Yes, that's right. She has given us a table topics, though. So I would like to hear from those who have been with us but have not had any opportunity yet. Kevin, would you like to unmute yourself and tell us very quickly about what you caught of the meeting, maybe, and your impressions as well?
All good fun. I was around when the Pathways used to be called REP, the Revitalised Education Programme, so I watch with keenness what George has managed to do and push through in his district and what's moving forward. So it's great to hear from those that are more advanced than the greater proponents. I'm a big fan of online clubs. I think it is the way forward, and now that Pathways is particularly embracing technology as a whole, I think it's definitely the right thing to be doing to make it much more relevant to the day.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you, Kevin. And are you currently a member of an online club?
A couple, and I'm also in the process of trying to start one.
Okay, and do visit us again. You know our schedule here, and we would love to have you. Ruth, I think, Ruth, were you on the table topics a while ago, or?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So let us move. Is there anybody else who has been with us? Oh, Peter, I think Peter is here. Yes, Peter, are you still on? Please unmute yourself. Peter is actually a charter member, and hopefully he will be a comebacking member, hopefully. But Peter, let us hear from you.
Yes, hello everybody. Now, regarding the membership of this club, well, in my part, the meeting starts around 8 a.m. and on Thursdays I'm usually at work at that hour, but c'est la vie. Today I'm going to work later, so I was able to participate. This was a very useful session for me, as my part of the world is not on Pathways yet. To my understanding, we will be pathwayed in March next year, and I will join a club that is on Pathways already, a club accepting online presence, that is. I learned a lot today. Thank you very much. Thank you, George. Thank you, panel member. Thank you, table topic speaker. You all gave something to all of us. I have been very interested in these things way before it was even called Pathways. I was on my ambassador's tale already when it was called this revitalized something. What it was. But thank you very much indeed. Very useful to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter. And I have just quickly glanced down at all the guests on the chat list, either as table topics or in other ways. I believe everybody has had the opportunity to speak, and it is now exactly half hour. I know that everybody still wants to chat, and yes, we can all stay on and chat, but just because we are Toastmasters, I want to walk our talk. I want to manage our time. And for those who have other appointments, who have to leave right after we adjourn the meeting, we understand and enjoy your day, your evening, your afternoon, or wherever you are. For those who haven't had enough of witty storytellers online because we're such a wonderful group, please stay on after we adjourn. I also want to thank George Marshall for organizing the panel, being such an amazing guide and pioneer. Let's all give George a really big hand. And of course, the other George, who was really busy. It's hard to be a timer. It's one of the most thankless jobs. And we also want to give thanks to George, the other George Heck, for being our timer. Let's give George a big hand. And of course, we even had a backup timer. So we are such a wonderful group. I would now like to officially adjourn the meeting. And then the recording will stop. And the recording will start back again for our after party for half an hour. So I